Welcome back, people. It's Joe, and we have Jess. And we're going to continue where we left off last. Last time we talked, we were with a JavaScript Alexa app. So today we're going to discuss moving it to TypeScript. Also setting up a local debugger so you can see the debugging. And just seeing the transition from JavaScript to TypeScript because we love TypeScript.
Oh, yeah.
A lot.
Fanboy. I'm not a fanboy of much, but I'm pretty much not a fanboy of anything, but I am a fanboy of TypeScript.
Agreed.
Yeah. TypeScript, all the things. All right.
So we'll let Jess share his screen and...
Oh, it's on me? I'm doing something?
We're going to follow you.
All right.
Since, you left off on the JavaScript, so it's best to have you start off with the TypeScript.
All right. So I'm using your template here, Joe. You got this Alexa skill TypeScript template. So this makes it this template makes it super easy to get started. So it's a lot like the AWS CLI, the Ask CLI, where you can like ask create like we did last time. But that only gives you, what were the options? Node and Python? And maybe Java, I think.
Yeah, no TypeScript option.
Yeah, no TypeScript. Even though TypeScript compiles perfectly down and runs in Node, there's no TypeScript option. So they need to get with the time. So until they do, use Joe's template here. So this is a GitHub template repository. So we're looking at a repository, but it's a template. So in your settings here, you configured it as a template repository, which means we've got this cool little button, right? So if we go down here to the README, you can see kind of how to use this this repository here. See, my window's skipping all around. It's obnoxious. Oh, geez. So the first thing to do, when you want to use this repo, is create from template, right? So we're going to use this repo and use it as a template and create our own repo. So there's two ways to do it. You can use the GitHub web UI, which is basically just going up here and clicking this button. And it brings you to this page. And so, it's telling you everything. And then this looks like a normal creating a repo page in GitHub. But in addition to teaching AWS and Alexa on this show, we're also going to be talking about the GitHub CLI here. So this is a cool tool. If you don't have it, you can. I'm on my Mac, so I brew installed it. But there's a link in here to how do you actually.
I've been loving the command prompt for like a long time, and I tried to do everything in the command line, and I did not know about this CLI. So I was pretty blown away when he told me about this. I was blown away for the fact that I didn't know about it, and then I was blown away actually seeing how it works. It's really, really cool.
So it's got a lot of cool things here, right? So you've got all these commands. So you can do just about anything. This is a CLI on top of the GitHub API, basically, right? So you can do anything that you can do in the UI, more or less. You can even do actions, GitHub actions and stuff. So the thing I use it the most for, actually, because I don't really create many repos, but the thing I use it most for is actually watching action workflows and like waiting for them to complete in my console, right? Without like refreshing the web page. You can actually trigger the workflows and everything. You can create PRs. That's the other big thing that I do. So like when you're in a repo and you're ready to make your PR, you can just say GitHub PR create and go. But here we are doing, I'm just going to, copy PR apparently. I'm going to copy this. Sorry, my voice is a little messed up. My kids brought home a nice little cold or something for me. So I'm just going to copy and paste that. And then at the end, I'm going to give my repo name. So the last repo is just kind of a hello world. But this repo, I think, is the beginning of the application that we're actually going to build out and show how to use. And that the demo application is something that Joe actually already started doing a while ago called Mr. Math. And so it's basically just going to be a math trivia game that we'll build out.
Yeah, and the reason why we decided to do Mr. Math is it's something simple enough that people can use. And I feel like as far as a skill, one of the end goals is you're going to ask questions. Well, it's going to ask you questions. You're going to answer. So when people play games, people hate to lose. So if they start asking questions, if Alexa start asking questions that they can't figure out, it makes them want to play more. But on top of that, if you have some sort of leaderboard around the world and you can see who's number one in the world, people are going to want to play more because they want to get that number one spot. It's just, that's what
it's
gamers
awesome.
do.
Yeah. Well, and implementing it is going to be super simple too, because it's literally 1 + 1 = 2, right? That's literally what we're going to be doing.
It should be super simple.
So,
but
yeah. Well, we'll see. All right. So for now, I'm just going to hit enter here. So there's my name, and it's going to create the repo. Name already exists on this account. I thought I deleted it. Hold on. Let me go to my repos. Out of Mr. Math. I thought I deleted it. Here's my GitHub page, everybody. Oh, look, this is what I was messing around with. All right. So you guys get to see behind the scenes. All right. Actually, I could have just used the CLI to do this, probably. But oh my gosh. Yeah, right. I've never done this before, though. All right. 78. There we go.
I'm noticing that the GitHub mobile numbers that they give you always are extremely similar. So
yeah.
I don't know. Like, I get the numbers, and I feel like I get the same numbers all the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's weird.
All right, there we go. So now I've got my repo. So I created the repository on GitHub, right? So if nothing happened here in my local folder, so now I need to clone. So again, I could go up to. Let me duplicate this to save our spot. I could go up to my repositories, and I can go and find Mr. Math, and I can, copy the URL, or I can somewhere here copy this URL, right? Clone that way, or
you can use the
GitHub CLI. So you say GitHub repo,
CLI, not GitHub repo.
Yeah. You get the GitHub repo clone, and the cool thing here is because it knows who I am. I just say clone my repository, Mr. Math. And so it's going to clone my repository, jchadwick/Mr. Math on GitHub. So I don't need the whole URL. And so now I've got it, right? So now I can go into Mr. Math, and I'll open this up in VS Code. So
that simple little command, GitHub repo clone, that was one of the things that blew me away, because I hated having to go to the browser, do that. And I know I'm like years behind because this has been out for a while, because I researched it after I learned about it. But right now I'm blown away because it's new to me. So
it's great. All right, so I'm in VS Code. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to be doing all this stuff in VS Code, and then at the end we'll switch over to Joe, because Joe's the Vim guy over here, and so he's going to show us how to use it in Vim, because we have set this repo up for debugging in both VS Code and in Vim with the Vim Inspector. So we'll get to that later. But this is the repo out of the box. So if we look at a couple of different things, you'll see ask helpers everywhere. So we have this is the template, right? It literally just made a copy of Joe's repo. And so to kind of help get started and replace things with our skill name, we created this. Here, I'm going to show it's in the README here. We created this init script, so you can do init repo, and that actually goes and it changes all those names in the template so that you can personalize it. So you can call it without any parameters, and it'll just use the directory that you run it in, or you can specify a name, or the two parameters are the name of the skill and then the invocation of the skill. So that's what I'm going to do. So if I go here and I say init repo, my name of my skill is going to be Mr. Math, and then the invocation is going to be Mr. Math. So Mr. Space Math. So this is actually redundant. The way the script works, I actually, doing it this way, or just running init repo, would use the folder name Mr. Math, and then it would rip out that underscore and give us a space. So it's actually the same either way, but just to be explicit, there you go.
And just to point out that once the script is ran, it's going to clean up itself by deleting itself.
Yeah.
Because at that point, you don't need the script anymore.
Yeah. So these are the changes that it made. I'm not going to go through all of them, but it went through and it changed the package name, Mr. Math, the script name, and the invocation name in a couple of those files, and it deleted itself because you don't need it anymore, like Joe said. This template has a couple of different folders, like we see in the README. All the way down here at the README, we have the repository structure, which kind of talks about the different files that are in the template. The scripts folder has a couple of useful scripts that we can use, which most of them we actually have just reproduced as NPM scripts. So you can live in NPM. Yeah. and then obviously the VS Code folder, and then finally the skill folder, which is the same as the Hello World one that we did before. So this is our skill package. So this is our assets, our interaction model, and everything that we already went over in the last video. And then also our Lambda. And so here's the magic in here, right? We've got our TS config. So there's the TypeScript magic. And then in the source folder, we've got an index.ts. The script also just includes or installs all the node modules for you as well, just as a convenience since you're going to do that.
So if you go to the bottom, you have your handler. So this is going to create like your main input into the Alexa skill, which is like your Lambda handler. So it's going to do skill.builders, alexa.skillbuilders.custom.add request handler. Your request handler is the control handler, which is your hello manager, which you see on line 92. That's almost like your entry point when it gets from the Lambda to your entry point to your actual Alexa skill. And the reason it says .lambda because it needs to be a Lambda to be an Alexa skill. Like you can host it on Amazon, or you can host it on Alexa hosted skill, or you can host it on AWS.
That's what we did last time, the Alexa hosted skill. Yeah.
So in this case, you need to have a control handler, which in this case is going to be your hello manager. So if you expand on line 92.
Well, so what this is using controls now too, right? That's a big paradigm. That's a big difference from the hello world that we saw last time.
Yeah. So actually the setup is a lot different from the JavaScript version, because we're using the JavaScript version, we didn't have any like this control framework. So if you go to the top to your imports, we're now importing this package called ask/sdk/controls, and it comes with like a lot of different things: your input util, control handler, control manager, container control, literal content act, just so many things that it has, and it makes creating Alexa skills, I would say, easier. One, because it has a lot of built-in things that you can use. And then on top of that, it has the TypeScript. So you can actually go to the TypeScript to even understand deeper of how like certain functions work or certain methods work, which I do a lot. I'll just go use one of their things and I'll go to the definition, and then it gives you a whole description of what it does because everything is documented.
Yeah. And now this is really cool. So now, if we go back here, I think we got the hello control. So the hello manager, it looks like all of our stuff we've done here in the hello control here. We've added the children and everything. But to your point, we do a control handler, and this creates a hello manager.
Correct.
And this creates a control tree. So this is just like the root node of the tree.
Yeah. So this is like the main, like pretty much the root node. And in this case, it's going to return a new hello control, and every control
which
needs
is
to have an ID. So that's what ID could be anything. It doesn't have to be hello control. You can pretty much name it whatever you want, but it needs to have an ID. Once it has that ID, then if you look at line 69 for the hello control, that's the actual class that actually is going to do something to probably what you remember seeing in the JavaScript version, where you had like the different types. So I'd ask you the question, and it was like, I don't remember the terminology, but because I don't really use that way a lot, but this way is pretty much doing the same thing as the JavaScript version without the control framework, but it uses its own like launch request control, which comes from the ASK SDK controls. And it has, everything extends from a container control. So that's one thing. So you can build your custom controls, and then all of your controls can have kids. So in this case, the hello control has a launch request control. It has a hello response control, a stop or cancel intent control, a session ended request control, and a fallback response control. So when you add these here, this is going to help when you try to do your intents. Because if it doesn't have the child here, then it's almost like it doesn't exist. So
right.
Say, for instance, you had like, if you go to the n-us.json file.
Mm-hmm.
So say, for instance, like we have the fallback intent, cancel intent, all these different intents. But if they're not also on the, like, put out in that it's one of the children, or they have a child control that had those as children, basically it needs to be set up in some form of a tree in one of those. Because if not, it'll never get called. So gotta have.
Well, and vice versa, right? These need to be a mirror of each other, right? So like if you register a component as a child but don't register it as an intent here, it won't ever get triggered, right?
Yeah. But there is a case where they have like some custom controls that Alexa has already built for you, like a list control, which I haven't played around with that too much, so I'm not 100% sure on that part. But as far as this part, they need to live in both.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so that seems like a pain in the butt to kind of keep up on, right? To do that manually, to sync that up. So
yeah, I've had my pitfalls where even on the last video where the fallback intent wasn't in the n-us.json, and we couldn't get it to fall back because it wasn't there, but it was in the actual like JavaScript code.
So, but I think in the next video we're talking about showing you how to fix that, right?
Yes.
You do that a better way. So yeah, that's cool. I'm looking forward to that because I've never done that thing that you told me about. That you're gonna have to wait until the next video to see.
We won't talk about that.
Teaser. Okay. So, all right, when we're looking at these guys, these are not the hello response control, stop it. These seem like out of the box components or controls, but they're not, right? These are actually classes that you made here, right? Yes. So can you talk about this? So it extends literal content control, which I think we'll get to, but like just this.
Yes. So
talk about this.
In this case, if you look at line 63, for the fallback response control, it's extending from a literal content control, which is a different control, but
which is up here, and we'll get to that.
We'll get to that. Yeah. But basically, what it is, all the controls have a can handle function, and that can handle function basically controls whether this function will be called. So if can handle returns true, then it can handle it. If it returns false, then it won't be able to use it. And there are some times where multiple things can return true, and then you have to figure out which one you're going to give the control to
tiebreaker.
Tiebreaker. So in this case, it says if it's a fallback response control, and it says input util dot is fallback intent. So the thing about this is the input util comes from the Ask SDK control framework. It has the built-in is fallback intent, so you don't even have to think about the naming or anything. You just use their function, and then it's going to look at the input, and it'll know if it's a fallback intent.
Right, and it's got a bunch of helpers here.
Yeah. So
and no magic strings, right? So that's cool.
Yeah. It's a lot easier. So if it's a fallback intent, it's going to say, okay, I can handle this. So my can handle is going to return true.
Yeah, great. All right, cool. So now we get up to, so that handles the fallback, and then so stop or cancel, I assume, is similar. No, you still have to use is intent, but now you're using those magic strings, but they're the Amazon magic strings.
Yeah, but we can always write a wrapper around this to build our own types, so we can still don't have to worry about like hard coding this. Because I don't know why they don't have. Maybe they do, but I didn't see it. I feel like they should have like is stop.
Right. I mean, it's weird that they have is fallback, but none of the others. But since they are special, but that's interesting. So here's our main one, right? So this is again, if we go back to the ENJS, hello world intent is the main thing, right? Not our entry point, not our launch point, but our main response.
Yeah. So. Can you go back to the NUS.json?
Yeah, NUS. Yeah.
Yeah, so with this, all of these samples are pretty much things that you can say to get that intent to trigger.
The samples, yeah.
And that's going to make the can handle return true. When you say hello, how are you, say hi world, or any one of those samples, that's going to force the can handle to return true.
Right.
Because when it comes in here, it's going to go into all of these can handles to figure out which one's going to return true. But I think if it gets to one first, that's the part I'm not sure about. I'm not sure if it gets to a true first, does it automatically exit out, or it keeps going, and then you got to figure out the tiebreaker.
Right, and that's what we'll figure out as we go in.
Yes.
Later on. Okay, so now these are all basically the same, right? Oh, here's another special one, is launch request, so that's a special one.
Yes.
So this is basically the entry point, right?
Yeah, so that is launch request is going to know automatically that you're saying like open Mr. Math or open whatever you want to call it.
So what about so now I think it's time for the literal content control. So this is, you wrote this, right? Or did you copied it from somewhere, or you wrote it?
I created this.
Okay.
At least I think I did. Sometimes I get other code and I start changing stuff around. I can't remember if I created it or not. Yeah. But there's a mixture somewhere in there.
But there is a base control. So this is something that they provide. So that has the can handle in there, I assume,
Yes.
right? That base control. Yeah.
Yes. And so right now, as you can see, it's going to be called literal content control, and it's going to take in a literal content and an end session, which is a Boolean value. And then it's just going to call the super, which is just passing the target name. And then the literal content is just pretty much setting the values like you've probably seen it in other classes, set end session to end session. So just setting those values. But what is really, doing the work is the handle function, because every control has a can handle and every control has a, handle function. So in this case, since everybody's using the same class as literal content control, it's gonna look at it, say, if this dot literal content basically does it have a value? And it's gonna go ahead and add this literal content act. And this prompt fragment is literally like the text.
Yeah. And this is a component. This is an Alexa. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. This comes right from there. Right. So you didn't make that.
Yeah. A lot of stuff is pulled from that ASK SDK controls. Why can't ASK? It's such a tongue twister. Ask SDK controls.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is if it's an end session, then you just end the session because you have a result builder and that allows you to end the session.
Yeah.
So if you've seen the one from the previous video, the code is different. That's why when we were talking last time, I was like, well, I've never done it that way because I've only done it this way. But I like this way a lot better because there's a lot of built-in things that you can use. Almost like if you're writing a C# application, you have all these built-in, things that you can use that comes with the language.
Yeah. So this, it seems like this component really solves for that really simple, straightforward case where like when this intent happens, say this thing.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. And so now, once we've explained all this, if we go all the way back down, now we can see where we actually register these things. And so when we have a launch request, say this.
Yes. And then
when we have the hello intent, say this. Yeah. When we have stop or cancel, say this, and then yada yada.
And then the values are the end session values. So you have the false, true, depending on which one.
Right. So stop or cancel intent is when we actually end the session here. So I do have to say, Joe and I talked a lot about this. Generally, I kind of hate when we have a bunch of classes in a single file. I'm very much not necessarily a strict one class per file, but like as close to one class per file or one module per file, or whatever, as possible. And so, especially when we have a template like this, where we're kind of implying that this is the way you should do it, I was very wary of this. But as we talked it through, as you build your application, you're going to create more files, obviously, right? We're not encouraging you to write everything in this file. But B, this kind of is the app right now. And this file is only 100, basically 100 lines long, excluding, empty lines, right? Yeah. So it's not really that hard to understand or whatever. But I mean, certainly as it grows, I think we're either going to start moving these controls out into other folders or, building stuff out into other folders and bringing it back in. So
we're set. I think you brought this up too. You brought this up. The fact that if somebody's using this, and this is like a template that they're going to use to start off, it's probably better for them to just start off with just everything in one file instead of having everything split up.
Yeah, I hate going to templates and having to delete a bunch of files that they created. Yeah, right, exactly. Sure. Okay, so cool. So we also have this nice, this is the other thing. Again, as much as I love TypeScript, going into a new project and figuring out what is the correct TypeScript configuration for that target environment or whatever, right? The different versions of Node, or in this case, the version of Node specifically that you need to run in Lambda to run your Alexa skill code in. Joe kind of did that for us, right? So we got the target common.js, ES 2020, and so we might update this over the years as this gets more advanced. But this is what you need, so you don't have to figure it out, and so that's really helpful. So I think now we just go ahead and everything else is good, right? Hold on, I got a cough. Go ahead.
Did we do build deploy yet? I don't remember if we did that part yet.
Well, no. So I was going to say, I think we've looked at all the code, but I think now we just go ahead and build. Okay. So now we have a couple of different things. So we have two package JSONs here. So we have the package JSON in our Lambda folder, which is our source code, where our TypeScript config is and everything. These are the real NPM scripts. But Joe and I, as we've been using this template, have found it really obnoxious to kind of CD into these folders and kind of remember what folder you're in. And so we duplicated a lot of these into the root package.json so that you can just be in the root and call everything and have everything there, right? And literally all these do is just jump into that folder and run those commands. So I'll start simple and I'll just npm run build here, which should run the build task. So what we should see here is the dist folder build out here, right? Here we go. So we got the dist folder. So there's our code. There's our TypeScript. I mean, there's the output from our TypeScript. It's our JavaScript with our source maps and everything, so we can have debugging and whatnot. And so, no, go ahead.
I was going to say this is what gets sent up to. This is what gets sent up as your Lambda.
Right.
Just in case they didn't know.
Right. So now we can now build and deploy too. So before we deploy, actually no, I can go ahead and build and deploy. So I can say npm run build deploy. So this will go ahead and build it again, which is just what I just did. And then it will push it to our Lambda.
Which now we're hosting on AWS.
Right. In the first video, we showed hosting in the Alexa hosted thing, and now we are hosting our own Lambda in AWS.
Yeah, so if you saw the last video, you saw everything had to be done through GitHub, but now we can actually do the build deploy, and it just sends it off to AWS, which is pretty cool, and it's going to take a while.
It's going to take, yeah, when they say it may take a few minutes, they actually do mean it's going to take a few minutes. I think we ran into this in the last video too, right? When we were just kind of waiting, or maybe it was when we were testing. When you deploy and you're just sitting there and you're like, what's happening? It takes a while to build this skill metadata and deploy it and everything. So, it's not an instant deploy. So this stuff really does take a couple of minutes to deploy. While that's deploying, is there anything else we need to look at? Let's look at these scripts while it's deploying.
I think those scripts are pretty cool.
Because the next thing after the next step after we deploy is we're going to start testing it. More specifically, we're going to debug it. And in order to do that, as we say here, I'm going to jump back here to the README. What we just did was step number 3 here, right? We didn't code anything. We just did it. Now, when you're ready to deploy your skill, we're going to refresh our token. So we had a script in here. And if we look here, what this script does is it actually is a wrapper for the ask-util generate tokens and the scopes here for debugging. So this is going to generate your debug token, and then it's going to strip it out. And this script, a little opinionated, it writes out to the ZSHRC, which is our, it is what it is, right? I think we can do like bash RC. I think ZSH reads that, right?
I don't know if that's a good question.
Yeah,
I used to do everything in the bash RC, but I'm not sure if my ZSHRC reads from my bash RC, or did it just automatically go to ZSH.
But that's what we did here, right? So it's a little bit opinionated. Oh, look, our skill deployed successfully, so we're there. But so we're a little bit opinionated. We're using ZSHRC, but ultimately what we're doing is this goes and it grabs that token and it writes it out to this ask token environment variable, which is then in our ZSH. So if I run this,
before you leave that, let's point out one thing.
Yeah,
is that it can work on a Mac and a Linux because uname == Darwin means it's a Mac.
Yeah.
Else it's going to do.
It does this little funky thing.
Yeah. And so we that is weird. So I don't know. Well, Jess made a good point that because maybe there are different versions of sed, but sed on Mac and sed on Linux do not work the exact same way. So if you've ever had issues on one, it may not be your code. It just may be that they just don't work the same.
Yeah. This is at least the second time that I've run into this on this project. Yeah. So if I go here, so this set act token will set it to the environment variable. And then we've wrapped this in this refresh token. In here, really, refresh token, which just calls that script, right? So now we can say npm run refresh token, and this is pretty cool. It's actually going to open up a web page. Go to Amazon for me. I would have logged in if I had not already been logged in, but since I was, I can just click allow, and now I can close my browser, and I've gotten that token. I'm not going to open it up and show you because you're not going to be able to see my token, but just trust me. So now I've got everything ready. We've deployed the script for the first time. I've got my token, and so now I can do npm start, which is going to be this command here, which is going to build my app again, just for the heck of it. And it's going to run that ask dialog just like we showed in the previous video. So actually, if I just run that, that's not the debugger. That's just running it. If I want, I'll just go ahead and run it. So we're just going to run it. We're going to open it up here, and no debugging yet. Not attaching a debugger,
but still able to use it.
But still able to use it. Yeah. So if I say open Mr. Math. What's up? How can I help you today? There we go. There's Mr. Math that we can kill and get out of here. All right, so that's that. That's the start. Now, if I go to my debugger, and since I've already set up the tasks here in the template, we're running, when we run the debugger, we're running two shells here. You'll see two shells, two terminals open up. One of them is the ASK debugger that actually reads in those environment variables that were set, and the other one is the ask dialog that we'll see.
So where does the set environment pre-launch task come from?
Set environment. Okay, so that's in the tasks. So that we're looking at the launch.json. The tasks are here. So set env actually calls this script, this get env script, which just reads the token, right? So you have to have that token set already, which I did. And then the skill ID, we just pull it from the ask states. Right? So we pull that automatically. So that kind of echoes that out into a file here. This launch file is just a temporary file. It's in the get ignore, so we're not going to save it in. Oh, there's my ask token. It's only the first half. That part's usually the same anyway.
I'll blur it out.
I'll just recreate it. I don't care. So that's what that does. So before we run this, we set the environment, and then when we run the launch config, we pull in that environment file. So we have those environment variables there.
Yeah, I want to give a special shout out to you just for getting all this part working with VS Code, because I don't use VS Code that much, so this is pretty cool.
And I use VS Code exclusively, so. So that's what that feeds these guys here, right? So in this command line, we can pass those in as environment variables, and they're pulled in from the environment file. So there we go. So now we can see the debugger started here, and then in our terminal, there's our task, the output of our task. We've got the launch ASK debugger, and it did not start the ask dialog. That's interesting. Launch ask dialog. Should have started that, but that's fine. Because that doesn't need to be special for debugging. We just need to be running the debugger. So now if I go in here and skill set a breakpoint on my... You can set up here, gets run in the beginning, but if I set it in my hello response control and my can handle, we can see what happens here. So now if I'll just run the ask dialog. Okay, npm run. Ask dialog.
The good thing about having those scripts in the root,
is
you don't have to go to that folder.
Okay, so then we open up Mr. Math. There we go. So this gets triggered. So now we can see, so can handle should be false, right? Because this was our hello world intent. So this is, if we look at the ENUS here, our hello world intent is not our launch intent. It only gets triggered when we say one of these words, one of these samples.
Do a hello. See, would it be true at that point?
Oh, good question. Yeah, let's see. Well, let's look at what it looks at. So it looked at the handler input, and somewhere in here, it's telling you here launch request, right? So here's the type of the request is a launch request. So that's what we're looking at here. Let's see. Can it handle? Oh man, now you're just going on the fly and just tempting fate is what this is called. Because now what's going to happen is we're going to have this is going to say it can handle it, and then the launch request is going to say it can handle it. So they're both going to say yes. Oh, it's going to get called again, apparently. Yeah, eventually this will. If you take too long, eventually this will time out, and you're going to start all over.
I wish they wouldn't have that timer.
Yeah.
When you're doing it locally.
Let's see what it does. No? Okay, so the launch request won. I assume because it was registered first. I'm guessing. Okay, so now if we say hi, we're going to hit our breakpoint, and this should be true. Yep. So we're not. This is the extent of the code, right? We're not actually matching any of these intents or anything. That's the Alexa framework is doing that for us. It's matching it to these samples and everything. So I said hi. So we get our hello world intent. So now I'll hand it over to you, Joe, because you've got this same project running on your machine, right?
Yes, I did do the same steps that you did. Gonna hide our faces for a little bit, just because I like to have them in full screen. So I already have the code here. I'm going to go ahead and run the refresh token. So npm run.
You gotta share
refresh token like that, right?
I can't see. You gotta share.
Oh, that would help out. That would definitely help out.
They can probably see because you're recording your screen, right? But I can't see.
Can you see now?
Yeah.
All right. So npm run refresh token. It's going to pop up telling me to log in.
Right. So you're running the same thing that I ran on my machine. So you're running Linux, right? Not only are you running that weird Vim thing, you're also running on Linux.
Weird Vim thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I just showed my email. That's fine. I'm gonna blur it out.
I welcome all emails, any and all feedback.
Yeah, I welcome feedback too. Just
that's what I learned way back in my time in Infragistics. I worked with a product manager there, and he said, "You know what you say to every customer request? That's good feedback."
Good point.
Great feedback.
So I'm gonna come in here the same way you did, and right now I'm just setting some breakpoints, and I'm gonna go ahead and call the debugger. But I'm using Vim Spectre, which is a little bit different than what Jess is using, but basically this is my Vim Spectre. And this is basically getting the access token, which is already set, calling that same script. And this is getting the skill ID, which is a different script than is using for the VS Code, but I think we can probably use the same script, so we may update that.
Yeah.
And then just using the local debugger. Pretty much all this is similar to what you see in VS Code. I'm just not doing like any pre-launch requests or anything like that. So now that I have that, I can actually start my debugger. So I have shortcuts for that. And the debugger is starting. And no. So now I'm inside of the debugger. And I actually could have ran the command that you did. But I'm just going to say open, where am I at? Open npm, oh no, you have npm run start, right?
npm run, you can do that. That'll build. But yeah, and that's fine, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
So it's building, and then it's going to do the open.
The ASK. Yeah. So the command I ran was npm run ask-dialog. This builds and then runs the ASK dialog. Now, what we don't have, which we should, and we will, so this template repo is relatively nascent too. It's, we just started working on it. So as we kind of learn new things, we'll update this repo. So depending on when you watch this video, the repo might be might be updated or whatever. But you'll see.
As you can see, I came in here. What's up? How can I help you?
There you go. You can hover over. You can see. Yeah.
And then this is my can handle. Put a breakpoint there.
Step through. And
then that's false, which it should be false.
Yep.
And then here should be still false again. So if I look at it. And then now I'm going to actually do the hello. I guess I waited too long. I'll just do this quicker.
I think you might have to kill it totally. Oh no, it worked.
They're really quick with the timing.
They are.
Okay, so now I'm going to put a breakpoint back here and just say hello. It's going to come in here again, and it should be true, which it is.
Yeah, awesome. There you go.
That's what I wanted to show there, and then I'm just going to exit out. Goodbye. And then go back to the screen and start presenting.
Yeah.
Now you've seen it work in VS Code as well as seen it work in I gotta make both of us the same size. You've seen it work in both of VS Code and Vim. Maybe you should share your screen.
Okay.
Because
to make us.
Oh, there you
go. Okay. All right. There you go.
This is new to me, guys. But yeah, so that's pretty much what we have. And on the next one, we're going to go even deeper and talk about how, well, I'll let you say it just because I think you said we weren't going to go too deep into it right now to talk about it. So I don't want to say too much.
I think we're just going to go into more best practices and basically leveraging TypeScript, right? And generating more of that metadata so you don't have to you don't have to update that enus file and keep those intents and everything. We'll actually just use the code to actually generate that file. So that's the next video. I'm looking forward to it. And then after that, we'll finally get into slots, which is what I'm excited about because that's when you actually interpret, what's being said, start coding against it and making a real app.
Yeah, and slots are variables, basically.
Yeah. Pretty
cool stuff.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for making this template. This is great. This template repository that you set up for us. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, I appreciate all your help as well. So I guess that will be it for today. Until the next time.
Peace out. There you go. See ya.